Season 5 of Breaking Bad is perhaps one of the most addicting seasons of any show I've ever watched. Each episode seems to go by so quickly, being incredibly engaging, and all ending on cliffhangers that make you scream what the actual hell is going to happen next. Though technically Season 5 of Breaking Bad, the final season, is 16 episodes long, which is the longest season of all of them, however, it was split into two parts that aired nearly a year apart from one another, so in a way, you could say there is a Season 5 and a Season 6. Maybe this is where Attack on Titan got its idea to do multiple final seasons, although they managed to make it to having 3 final seasons and Breaking Bad only has 2. But unlike Attack on Titan, the season being split in half with 8 episodes apiece actually makes a lot of sense because where the split happens, it kind of leads into 2 different storylines. There is a definitive first and second part of the story being told that sort of resolves itself after the first 8 episodes and then moves into the final 8. So because of this split, I'm going to make this video focusing only on the first 8 episodes of the final season because there's plenty to talk about in both halves. But this first segment I'm going to call The Rise of Heisenberg, because that's essentially what we see happen. Walter White in this season, accumulating all the past trauma, pain, and events that he's gone through so far, ramps up his decisiveness, his selfishness, and above all, his capacity for darkness, continuing to justify everything so that he can resume walking down this path that he set out on, and it becomes an unstoppable addiction. The irony that this entire time he's been making a highly addictive chemical substance that destroys people's lives, and he himself, just like he talked about in the very first episode, growth, decay, and transformation, he has become an addict himself. An addict of getting away with it, of outsmarting other people, and making everything work out the way that he desires. With Gus Fring now dead and his operation dismantled, Walt is nowhere near done with trying to make a profit from his business and basically makes the moves to create his own meth empire. The location of where he and Saul get in touch with a pest control business which is run by a bunch of shady characters, and they literally start using fumigated houses as their lab, which is super messed up if you think about it, because imagine somebody coming into your home and just setting up a meth lab for a night or two. And the casualness of Walt doing this too, and without a second thought, is kind of scary to think about. Still, using and manipulating Jesse as his partner as well during this season, their relationship is obviously the best one in the show, but Walt seems to only appreciate Jesse when Jesse is doing something that Walt thinks he should be doing. It's a father knows best kind of mentality, but to an absolute sickening degree. I always felt like Walt believes Jesse owes everything to him somehow, and to a degree that can be true, but it hasn't gotten Jesse anywhere, except far deeper into criminality than he ever expected to. With Walt's willingness to poison a child to get Jesse back on his side and his lack of remorse about it, letting Jesse break down into tears thinking that he lost the rice and cigarette, and Walt comforting him as if he truly had. It's just so disgusting to see this man like break down and pour his heart out to Walt, and Walt knowing the entire time that he's the reason why he's doing that. But Jesse, like everybody else, seems to be just a means to an end to him. Now, I do believe that Walt does love and care for Jesse in his own way, but that affection is only on display when Jesse is doing something that Walt wants him to be doing. Anytime Jesse branches out on his own, that love turns to bitter resentment at the flip of a switch. Now, I really need to talk about Mike here, because Mike is one of the best characters in the entire Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul universe, and I love his straight-to-the-point, take-no-bullshit style attitude. So when it comes to Walt, who just killed Mike's boss and blew up their entire operation, it makes sense that Mike would just want to kill him. I love every interaction with Walt and Mike this season. They argue constantly, Walt always thinking that he can handle and manipulate Mike. And then you have Mike, who is just stuck in this horrible position that he needs to solve. The cop sees all of his money that he had locked away for his granddaughter, and he's left with nothing. That and all of his men that were arrested, and he has to keep paying them for their silence, which forces Mike to have to team up with Walt on the new meth business, which creates a bunch of great interactions. Mike calling Walt a time bomb, just waiting for the moment that he explodes, suggesting to Jesse to just stop listening to him. Mike is right pretty much about virtually everything when it comes to Walt, and he always has been. He has that calm rationale and experience on both sides of the law that allow him to see things as they truly are, opposed to Walt's idealization of becoming the next Gus Fring, and everything that would entail. Skylar this season is where everybody starts to really despise her, but again, imagine knowing that your husband bombed a nursing home and has actively killed people and comes home and acts like it's nothing. At this point, she's been helping him with his operation and laundering his money, so she's in too deep to leave without being accountable herself. But every moment, Walt becomes more unpredictable and more dangerous, and she has a baby in the house, for God's sakes. A house that literally had assassins in it not too long ago that were looking for Walt. Her desire to want to get the kids out of the house, it makes sense, and when Walt basically says to her, "What are you gonna do? You can't go to the cops, and you can't keep me out of the house," it's legitimately terrifying. On Hank's end this season, he doesn't have a lot of great scenes in the first half. He does get promoted to ASAC, which is cool, and he gets some scenes with Mike interviewing and investigating him from being employed under Gus. And I love having scenes where characters that don't normally interact with one another are actually able to be in a scene, and also their personalities, the way that they clash, it's fantastic. Mike's calm, stoic superiority vibe and Hank continuously trying to get a rise out of him to no avail. It's fantastic. I think one of my favorite episodes of Breaking Bad is called Dead Freight. It's literally a train heist episode. How cool is that? There's a new character introduced named Lydia who works for a company that supplied the various chemicals for Gus's operation, including all of the methylamine. Well, under investigation, she can't get them anymore, but she does tell them about a train that's carrying gallons of it. And this whole episode is about how they're going to orchestrate this really cool way of stealing it by getting the train to stop, distracting the conductors, emptying the methylamine tank while simultaneously filling it back up with water so it seems like nothing happened. It's so intense, it's crazy, it's filmed very frenetically, it's one of my favorite moments, and there's this constant threat of being caught or not finishing in time. And then it ends on such a victory with the characters actually pulling it off, but then one random witness, a kid on a dirt bike, that another new character, Todd, just shoots and kills in cold blood, ending the episode on one of the biggest WTF moments of the entire series. Yeah, so Todd is a silent, seemingly very polite employee of the house fumigation crew who is also connected to a bunch of neo-Nazi criminals. And he has no qualms whatsoever with child murder. But this half of the season doesn't focus on him as much as it does with Walt's reaction to the situation, which is kind of just passive. And it's interesting to see him reach this place. Now, he's not condoning it, but he's also not letting a consequence like this interfere with his operation. Jesse is torn up about it. An innocent, a child, died because of them for no reason at all. And this wasn't a drug kingpin like Gus or some street slingers. This was just a kid. And Walt continuing to cook business as usual, whistling while he works, with that out of sight, out of mind mindset, it just, it clashes with Jesse way too much. Another progression is when Mike finds a buyer that's willing to pay all three of them $5 million apiece for the methylamine that they stole. That's $5 million guaranteed and a way out of the business. More money than Walt ever expected to make when he started, and a perfect opportunity to give it all up and just live the rest of his life as a mild-mannered car wash owner, slowly laundering all the money that he's made over the years. But we're brought back to his original motivation and the regret and anguish that he felt towards Gretchen and Elliot. Those two characters have not been mentioned in a very long time at this point, but Walt brings up their company to Jesse, explaining to him and telling him how he took a buyout to the company that went on to make billions. Money that Walt felt entitled to, as if he should have been the one to become successful. And so this whole thing becomes more clear to Jesse. The addiction makes more sense, the desperate need to cling on to it and to push it as far as it can go. Self-admittedly, he is not here just to make enough to provide for his family and to gain them security. He is in the business of building an empire. Also, this scene leads into a very hilarious dinner with Walt, Skyler, and Jesse. Again, one of those great moments with characters that almost never interact, and just the second-hand awkwardness of the scene is fantastic. Now, one of the most tragic things in this season is Mike's untimely death. This hits even harder after watching Better Call Saul this year, because you see how hard Mike has worked, the sacrifices that he made, and how he was correct this entire time. The DEA takes away his money twice, and he's left with no choice but to leave town. But Walt wants the names of the men in prison, of which Mike refuses to give. And as Walt tries to shake him down, Mike wonderfully tells him off and succinctly breaks down Walt's entire persona.
You could have shut your mouth, cooked, and made as much money as you ever needed. You just had to blow it up. You and your pride and your ego. You just had to be the man. If you'd done your job, known your place, we'd all be fine right now.
And then out of pure rage and frustration, Walt shoots Mike in the gut. And it's so completely out of pocket and unnecessary. First of all, this is the same man that took an entire episode to build up the courage to kill somebody back in season 1, and now he's willing to pull the trigger without even a second thought just because he's pissed off. Not only that, but it was all pointless because Walt knew that Lydia could also get him the names of the people in prison. And as Mike sits there, bleeding out, nobody to comfort him, after everything that he's gone through, after his granddaughter is just going to think that he up and abandoned her at the park with no explanation, never to see him again, the only person he has to look at in his final moment is Walter White's stupid face. And I remember being so mad when I first saw this episode. I never thought Mike was going to make it out of the series alive, but to die so pointlessly for no reason at all, it just broke me for days, and I'm still not over it. The final episode of Part 1 exemplifies Walt's greed and power even more, expanding the reach of his distribution, incorporating Todd to take Jesse's spot, and instead of paying for the silence of Gus's employees in prison, Walt uses Todd's connections to perform a hit within the prison walls themselves, killing all 9 men within minutes of one another so that none of them can speak. And this wasn't a mercy killing. This wasn't even anybody that Walt knew. This was purely all to protect his innocence in the eyes of the law, and it works. Now, the dynamic between Walt and Jesse ends in a very strange place in Part 1. Jesse walks out on the business, and Walt refused to pay him the $5 million that he was owed. But after a few months and Walt's empire reaches the highs that he never thought imaginable, Skyler showing him the mountain of money that he has acquired, only then does Walt decide maybe he should reconcile with Jesse again and give him what he's owed. They have a very awkward conversation and a moment of nostalgia talking about the RV, but when Walt leaves, you get the sense that part of Jesse thought maybe Walt was there to kill him too, so that he would never talk. And Jesse's uncertainty and inability to trust is apparent here. And whereas Jesse seems to have no idea what to do next with his life, Walt finally tells Skyler that he's made enough and he's willing to walk away. And then we have what could possibly be an ending. Walt was never caught. Hundreds of millions of dollars have been collected. Him and Skyler are not doing well, but she's still here. And the only thing that could ruin this is one thing, and that is a simple, honest-to-God misstep in which nobody could have predicted. The same book of poems that Gale had, he had also gifted to Walt, with a little bit of writing inside saying nearly the same quote from his personal collection. Did Walt even realize that that quote was there? Did he even remember? The book sat casually in his bathroom underneath a stack of magazines, and when Hank goes in to drop the biggest log this side of the border, he needs something to read while it's going on. And he just so happens to pick up the book. Everything Walt did to be so careful, all the murders, the silencing, the chaos, the lies and maneuvers, all of it about to be undone by one simple phrase written in a book that he never expected anybody to ever pick up. I love it. And it was here that I caught up with Breaking Bad for the first time, and waiting almost an entire year after this cliffhanger was excruciating. But that's where Part 1 ends. After all this time of Hank hunting down Heisenberg and unknowingly breaking bread with him on a near weekly basis. It's about time. Now, the final 8 episodes deserve its own video, so I'm going to have one more vid in my Breaking Bad review series, but things are about to go downhill fast. I always loved part 1 of season 5 and watching the rise of Heisenberg. I think it's the most definitively dark Walt gets, and it has some legitimately great episodes. I would have loved to see more little missions with Walt, Jesse, and Mike and that crew, getting rid of Gus's laptop at the police precinct, the train heist and other aspects of this dynamic, and constantly having Walt and Mike bicker with one another. It's some of my favorite parts. But I guess all good things eventually come to an end. So let me know what you think of Breaking Bad Season 5, Part 1 down below. What was your favorite scene, your favorite moment, anything you want to add, anything about Walt's character? Please like this video and comment if you enjoyed it to help it in the algorithm. I'd appreciate it if you did. Also, if you want to support the channel on a deeper level, I do have a Patreon and channel memberships linked down below. But other than that, guys, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time.
Magnets! Oh!